She sat quietly in seat 7A, feet not even reaching the floor, swinging just a little as the plane moved through the clouds. To everyone else on board, she was just a kid's small backpack under the seat, headphones too big for her head, eyes fixed on the tiny window beside her. People smiled at her the way adults do, the polite kind of smile that means nothing more than, "She's cute." No one asked where she was going. No one wondered why she was traveling alone. They assumed there was a story, but not an important one. The cabin smelled like recycled air and coffee. Passengers were settling in, flipping through magazines, checking phones, complaining softly about delays. A man across the aisle sighed loudly and said this flight was already ruining his day. A woman nearby adjusted her jacket and muttered about turbulence. Life moved on in small, ordinary ways. The girl in seat 7 watched it all without reacting. She had learned long ago how to stay quiet, how to blend in, how to look smaller than she really was. The flight attendants walked past her more than once. One of them paused, leaned down, and asked gently if she needed anything. She shook her head and whispered, "I'm fine." Her voice was calm, too calm for someone her age. The attendant smiled, patted the armrest, and moved on, already forgetting the moment. To the crew, she was just another minor passenger with paperwork filed and rules followed. As the plane climbed higher, the world below turned into soft shapes and colors. Cities became grids, rivers looked like silver threads. The girl pressed her forehead lightly against the window. Her reflection stared back at her, serious eyes and a young face. She wasn't scared of flying. She wasn't excited either. This was not her first flight, and it would not be her last. To her, the sky felt familiar in a way she could never explain. In the cockpit, the pilots ran through routine checks. Altitude steady, weather clear, traffic normal. Everything about the flight was ordinary, the kind that never makes the news. The captain joked about the smooth ride. The co-pilot laughed. Neither of them knew that somewhere behind them, sitting just a few rows back, was a child connected to a past they had studied in simulations, but never expected to touch real life. Half an hour into the flight, a slight vibration passed through the plane. Most passengers barely noticed. A few looked up from their screens. Someone asked if that was turbulence. The seatbelt sign stayed off. The engine sounded normal, but not to everyone. The girl's eyes shifted. Her hand tightened on the armrest, not in fear, but in focus. She listened closely, the way a musician listens for a wrong note. Another vibration followed, longer this time. A flight attendant paused mid-step and glanced toward the front. The girl in seat 7 closed her eyes for a brief moment, breathing in, breathing out. Her body reacted before her mind finished forming the thought. Something was not right. In the cockpit, a warning light flickered, then stabilized. The pilots exchanged a look. Nothing serious, they told themselves. Systems corrected small issues all the time. Still, the captain informed air traffic control, keeping his voice relaxed. Procedures were followed. Calm words filled the radio, but the girl felt a pressure behind her ears, a subtle change in the rhythm of the aircraft. It reminded her of another time, another sky, another situation she never talked about. Her fingers moved slightly, tracing invisible patterns on her knee. Patterns she had memorized years ago, drilled into her until they lived in her muscles. Passengers began to sense that something had changed, even if they couldn't explain it. Conversations slowed. People looked around. The woman in front of the girl turned back and smiled nervously, as if to say, "It's probably nothing." The girl returned the smile, soft and reassuring, like she was the older one in the situation. Then the captain's voice came over the intercom, calm, professional. He mentioned a minor technical issue and assured everyone there was no danger. Most people relaxed at the sound of confidence. Some clapped lightly. The man across the aisle went back to his phone. the girl did not relax. Her heart rate stayed steady, but her attention sharpened. She knew that calm voices did not always mean calm situations. She also knew something else, something no one on that plane could imagine. Far above them, beyond what passengers could see or hear, eyes were already on this aircraft. Systems had flagged it. Signals had been noticed, somewhere in the sky. Far faster than any commercial jet, fighter pilots were receiving updates. At first, it was routine monitoring. Then a name appeared in a secure channel. A call sign, old and rarely spoken. One that belonged to someone who was not supposed to exist anymore, especially not as a child sitting quietly in seat 7A, back in the cabin. The girl rested her head against the seat and closed her eyes again. She whispered something under her breath, not a prayer, not a wish, but a habit. Outside, clouds drifted by, unaware that the quiet flight was slowly becoming something else entirely. The kind of story that would later be told in fragments, because no one would fully believe it, and no one, not yet, was ready for what would happen when the F-22s finally spoke her call sign out, loud. Asterisk. The plane kept moving forward, smooth on the outside, tense underneath. Most passengers tried to return to normal. Screens lit up again. Headphones went back on. People trust routines, especially at 30,000 feet. They want to believe that nothing bad can happen because someone trained is sitting in front of a control panel. The girl in seat 7A stayed still. Her eyes were open now, watching small details most people ignore. The way the engine sound rose and fell. The slight delay between vibration and correction. The air felt heavier, like the plane was carrying a secret it did not want to share. She did not panic. Panic wastes time. A flight attendant walked past again, this time slower. She smiled, but her eyes kept moving, checking faces, checking hands. When she reached seat 7A, she stopped. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" she asked. Softly, the girl nodded. "Yes," she said. Then, after a short pause, she added, "You should tell them to check the left system again." Her tone was polite, almost casual. The attendant blinked, surprised. "What was that?" she asked with a small laugh, thinking it was just a child repeating something she heard. The girl didn't answer. She turned her face back toward the window. The attendant stood there for a second, unsure, then shook her head and moved on. Kids say strange things, she told herself. In the cockpit, the left side indicator flickered again, longer this time. The co-pilot frowned and leaned closer to the panel. "That's odd," he said. The captain exhaled slowly. "Run the check one more time," he replied. His voice stayed calm, but his shoulders stiffened. "Experience teaches you when to stop." Joking. Air traffic control responded quickly, their voices professional but alert. They suggested a small course adjustment, just to be safe. The captain agreed. The plane tilted slightly, barely noticeable to the cabin, but enough to make a few passengers grip their armrests. The girl felt the change instantly. Her jaw tightened. This adjustment would help for now, but it would not solve the real problem. She had seen this before. Different aircraft, different sky, same mistake. People trusting the wrong system for too long. Far above, two fighter jets cut through the sky, invisible to everyone below. Their pilots listened as new data streamed in. The commercial aircraft was not in immediate danger, but something about its pattern did not sit right. Then the secure channel updated again. The same call sign appeared, confirmed by multiple sources. The pilots went quiet. One of them finally spoke. "That can't be right," he said. "She'd be older." The other pilot didn't answer right away. He had learned never to ignore the impossible. "Ask for visual confirmation," he said. Back in the cabin. Turbulence hit harder this time. Not violent, but enough to make people gasp. A cup tipped over. Someone cursed it under their breath. The seatbelt sign chimed on. The captain's voice returned, calm but firmer now, instructing everyone to remain seated. The girl fastened her seatbelt without looking. Her breathing stayed even. Around her, fear started to spread quietly like a cold. People don't scream at first. They whisper. They search faces. They look for someone to blame or someone to save them. The man across the aisle noticed her calm and frowned. "Hey," he said, trying to smile. "You're brave, huh?" She looked at him, her eyes steady. "This part is easy," she replied. He laughed nervously, not understanding, and turned away. Another announcement came from the cockpit, this time shorter. The captain said they were monitoring the situation and that safety was their top priority. It was the kind of sentence trained professionals use when they don't want to lie but can't tell the truth either. The girl leaned back and closed her eyes. Images flashed in her mind: training rooms, simulators, voices correcting her posture, her timing, her instincts. Again, they used to say, "Faster, trust yourself." She had been younger then too. People often forget how early some lives stop being normal. A sudden jolt shook the plane, sharper than before. A few passengers cried out. Someone started praying out loud. The flight attendants moved quickly now. No more smiles, only focus. One of them stumbled, caught herself, and locked eyes with the girl in seat 7A for a brief second. There was something unsettling about that calm face. In the cockpit, alarm sounded, not screaming yet, but insistent. The co-pilot read out data faster. The captain made a decision and informed control. The words "precautionary measures" were used. That phrase never comforts anyone who understands it. Then something unexpected happened. A new voice entered the cockpit audio, routed through secure military channels. Clear, controlled, commercial. "Flight, this is escort unit. You are not alone." The captain froze for half a second. Military escorts were rare. Fighter escorts were rarer. In the cabin, no one heard those words, but the girl felt them. Her eyes opened. She looked up, as if she could see through metal and clouds. A small, almost invisible change crossed her face. Not fear, not relief, but recognition. She whispered again, so quietly no one heard. "They found me." Outside, high above, the fighters closed in, and one of the pilots finally said the words that would change everything. Not yet over open channels. Not yet for everyone to hear. But soon, and when they did, seat 7A would never be just a seat again. The sky outside turned darker, not from night, but from clouds stacking higher than expected. The plane pushed forward anyway, like it always did, trusting charts and numbers more than instinct. Inside the cabin, time felt stretched. Minutes passed slowly, heavy with quiet fear. The girl in seat 7 opened her eyes and studied the aisle. People were gripping armrests now. A child too rose. Back started crying, confused more than scared. An older man whispered instructions to his wife that didn't really help either of them. Fear was becoming visible, and once fear shows itself, it spreads fast. She unbuckled her seatbelt for a second and adjusted how she was sitting, feet planted firmly now. The way a pilot sits, the way someone prepares without making a scene. Flight attendant noticed and immediately walked toward her. "Please stay seated," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I know," the girl replied. "I just need to be ready." "Ready for what?" the attendant asked, almost sharply. The girl looked up at her. "For when they ask." The attendant felt a chill she couldn't explain. She wanted to say more, to correct her, to remind herself this was just a child. But before she could respond, her earpiece crackled. She straightened instantly and hurried forward without another word. In the cockpit, the situation had crossed an invisible line. Red warnings replaced yellow. The co-pilot's voice tightened as he read off numbers. The captain listened, jaw clenched, hands steady but sweating. Training said one thing. Experience said another. Then the military channel opened again. Commercial. "Flight, "This is escort lead. We have visual." The captain swallowed. "Confirm what you see." There was a pause. "Not long, but long enough to matter. We confirm seat position forward left. Call sign matches." The cockpit went silent. "That's impossible," the co-pilot whispered. The escort pilot's voice stayed calm, professional, but there was something underneath it, respect. "We are requesting confirmation from the individual." The captain looked back toward the cabin door, his mind racing. "That's a minor," he said. "A child." "Understood," the escort replied. "Still requesting confirmation." In the cabin, the girl felt it before anyone spoke to her. The pressure shifted again, not mechanical this time, but human. Decisions were being made about her. She took a slow breath and stood up. Several passengers gasped. A man near the aisle reached out. "Sit down," he said, fear sharp in his voice. "It's dangerous." She shook her head gently. "It's more dangerous if I don't." The flight attendant rushed toward her. "You can't be up right now." "They know," the girl said quietly, "and they're waiting." The words didn't make sense, but the certainty in her voice did something strange. The attendant hesitated, just for a second. That second was enough. The girl walked forward, steady despite the turbulence. Each step felt familiar, like a path she had walked before in another life. Passengers stared, confused, some annoyed, some afraid. To them, she was breaking rules. To her, she was answering a call. When she reached the cockpit door, she stopped. The plane shuddered again. Somewhere above them, engines roared in a way no commercial passenger jet ever could. Inside the cockpit, the captain heard the soft knock. He turned, heart pounding. "Who is it?" he asked, already knowing this was no normal moment. "It's seat 7A, the girl said. "They're asking for me." The captain unlocked the door slowly. When he saw her standing there, small, calm, eyes sharp, something in him broke and steadied at the same time. He had flown for decades. He had seen storms, failures, near disasters. He had never seen this. "You're very young," he said carefully. She nodded. "I know, but the call sign is still mine." The co-pilot stared at her, unable to speak. The radio crackled. The escort pilot's voice came through again, clearer now. "Commercial flight, we are ready to receive confirmation." The captain hesitated, then handed the headset down, his hands trembling. The girl took it with both hands. For the first time, her voice carried weight far beyond her size. "Escort lead," she said, steady and clear. "This is me." There was silence. Then, over the secure channel, the voice responded, no doubt left now. "Call sign confirmed." In the cabin, passengers felt the plane level slightly, as if something unseen had finally taken control. They didn't know why, but a strange calm followed the fear, the kind that comes when chaos meets certainty. The girl handed the headset back and met the captain's eyes. "You need to adjust your descent timing," she said. "They'll guide." U.S. Outside, the fighters took formation, one on each side of the aircraft. Guardians cutting through the clouds. The world would soon ask questions. The news would argue. People would doubt. But right now, at 30,000 feet, one truth was clear. Seat 7A was no longer just carrying a child. It was carrying the reason this plane was about to make it home. Asterisk. The moment the cockpit door closed again, the weight of what had just happened settled over the plane. Not loudly, not dramatically. It settled the way pressure does, quiet, unavoidable, changing everything without asking permission. The girl returned to her seat without anyone stopping her. No one tried. Passengers watched in silence as she walked back down the aisle. Some stared with confusion, others with a kind of respect they didn't understand yet. The man across the aisle lowered his eyes when she passed. He didn't know why, but he felt like he had misjudged her in a way that mattered. She sat back in seat 7A and fastened her seatbelt. Her hands were steady. Inside, she felt the familiar pull between who she was now and who she used to be. She had hoped this quiet flight's normal faces, being overlooked, could last longer. In the cockpit, the captain followed new instructions coming through the military channel. The escort pilot spoke clearly, guiding altitude and speed with confidence that cut through the tension. This was no longer a routine flight. It was a coordinated operation. Trust them, the girl had said, and the captain did. The plane adjusted its path gently, carefully. The turbulence eased, not because the sky had changed, but because the plane was finally moving the way it should have been all along. Passengers noticed the difference immediately. The shaking softened. The sharp drops disappeared. A few people let out nervous laughs. Someone whispered, "I think we're okay now." No one knew why they felt safer, only that they did. The flight attendant who had spoken to the girl earlier sat down for the first time since takeoff. Her hands trembled as she folded them together. She kept replaying the girl's voice in her head, not excited, just certain. Certainty, like, "That doesn't come from imagination." In the cabin, phones were useless, screens dark or frozen. People had nothing to do but think. And thinking brought questions. Why were their military jets so close? Why had a child been in the cockpit? Why did the captain sound calmer now than he had earlier? The girl looked out the window again. This time, she saw them. Two sharp shapes sliced through the clouds, one on each side, close enough that she could see the markings, the movement of control surfaces, the way they held position effortlessly. F-22s, beautiful and dangerous, like creatures built only for the sky. She felt something tighten in her chest. Not fear, memory. In the cockpit of one of the fighters, the pilot glanced sideways and saw her looking back through the window. He had flown missions in hostile airspace. He had faced real danger. Yet seeing her there so small, so calm, made his throat tighten. "That's her," he said quietly over the channel. "No doubt." His wingman didn't respond right away. Then he said, "Hard to believe." Below them, the commercial aircraft moved like a guided thread through the sky. The danger was not gone, but it was controlled now. Controlled danger is something professionals can work with. Back in seat 7A, the girl rested her head against the seat. Her body finally allowed itself to feel tired. Adrenaline fades fast when you've lived with it too long. She closed her eyes for a moment and remembered hands adjusting her grip years ago, voices correcting her timing, skies that were never forgiving. She remembered being told that one day she would have a choice to stay hidden or to answer the call if it ever came. Again, the call had come. A soft chime sounded through the cabin. The captain's voice followed, steadier than before. He informed passengers that they were being escorted as a precaution and that there was no immediate danger. He thanked everyone for their patience. People listened more carefully now. Authority sounds different when it's backed by results. A woman nearby leaned toward the girl. Are you important?" she asked, half joking, half serious. The girl opened her eyes and smiled politely. "Not today," she said. "Just useful." The woman laughed, unsure why tears filled her eyes at the same time. The plane began its gradual descent earlier than planned. The escort confirmed a clear path. Emergency crews were notified on the ground, not because disaster was expected, but because no one was taking chances anymore. Outside, the fighters adjusted formation, never leaving their position. To anyone watching from the ground, it would look unreal, a passenger plane, guarded like something priceless. Inside the cabin, something had changed in the way people breathed. Fear had turned into curiosity. Curiosity into quiet awe. The girl felt the descent in her bones. She counted seconds in her head, tracking angles and timing without meaning to. Old habits don't disappear. They sleep. As the runway came closer, lights lining up perfectly ahead, one of the escort pilots spoke. Again. This time, not in code. "Good to have you back," he said. The girl did not answer out loud, but she heard him, and she knew this was not the end of the story, only the moment the world began to notice. The wheels touched the runway with a controlled thud, firm but clean. The kind of landing that tells professionals they did their job right. A few passengers clapped without realizing it. Others pressed their hands together, whispering thanks to no one in particular. The plane slowed, steady and obedient, guided by lights, voices, and decisions made far above ordinary thinking. The girl in seat 7A kept her hands folded in her lap. Landing was the loud part. The danger had already passed in the sky. What came next was always harder. Outside the windows, emergency vehicles rolled alongside the aircraft, lights flashing but sirens silent. Fire trucks, security units, people noticed and fell quiet again. Phones came out, trying to capture what little they could, but most screens showed nothing useful. The rules were clear now. Stay seated. Wait. In the cockpit, the captain exhaled deeply for the first time since the alerts began. Sweat darkened his collar. He removed his headset and stared at the runway ahead, knowing this flight would stay with him forever. He had trusted a child, and that trust had brought them home. A voice came through the secure channel one last time. "Escort disengaging," the fighter pilot said. Then quieter, "Take care of her." The captain closed his eyes for a brief second. "We will," he replied. In the cabin, a flight attendant made her way to seat 7A again, this time slowly, respectfully. She knelt beside the girl. "They'll want to speak with you," she said, not as a question. The girl nodded. She had expected this. Passengers watched closely now, no longer pretending this was normal. The man across the aisle leaned forward. "You saved us, didn't you?" he asked, his voice low, almost afraid of the answer. The girl looked at him carefully. "A lot of people did," she said. "I just helped at the right time." It wasn't false modesty, it was accuracy. The seatbelt sign turned off. No one moved. Authority doesn't come from lights when moments like this happen. It comes from understanding that something important is unfolding. The cabin door opened, and uniformed officials stepped inside. Their movements were calm, controlled. They scanned faces, then stopped when their eyes found her. One of them hesitated. He had expected many things, but not this. "Seat 7A?" he asked. "Yes," the girl replied. "Please come with us," he said gently. She stood, adjusted her backpack, and stepped into the aisle. As she walked forward, passengers watched her go, like she was carrying a piece of the sky with her. Some nodded, some whispered thank yous. One woman wiped her eyes. At the door, the girl paused and looked back at the cabin. At the ordinary people who had no idea how close they had come to an ending they would never see. She gave a small wave. Not dramatic, just human. Then she stepped off the plane. The air outside felt different, heavier, louder, full of motion and intention. Cameras waited at a distance, kept back by officials who knew some stories were not ready to be told. The girl was guided into a quiet vehicle, the door closing softly behind her. Inside, an older officer sat across from her. He studied her face for a long moment. "You were supposed to stay hidden," he said, not accusing, just stating a fact. "I tried," she replied. He nodded. "You always do." They drove in silence for a while. Finally, he spoke again. "The pilots recognized the call sign. Some people will ask questions." "They always do," she said. "What do you want to happen now?" he asked. She thought about it. About classrooms she had never sat in. About playgrounds she had never used. About normal days she had borrowed, under borrowed names. "I want to finish this flight," she said. "Then I want to go back to being invisible." The officer looked away, conflicted. "That may not be possible anymore." She didn't answer. She knew. Back on the runway, the plane sat surrounded by activity, yet strangely peaceful. Passengers would tell this story for the rest of their lives. They would argue about details. They would never agree on everything, but they would all remember one thing. A kid in seat 7 stood up when no one else could, and the sky listened. The hours after the landing passed in fragments, not in a straight line. Time stretched and folded in strange ways, the way it does after something big happens. The girl sat in a quiet room with plain walls and no windows, her feet still not touching the floor. A cup of water rested on the table in front of her. She hadn't taken a sip yet. Across from her, adults spoke carefully, choosing every word like it could change the shape of the future. They asked questions that sounded simple but carried weight. Where had she learned those systems? Who had trained her? When was the last time she had flown under that call sign? She answered honestly, but briefly. Not because she was hiding anything, but because long explanations were never required when people already knew the truth. Each answer made the room quieter. One man finally leaned back and rubbed his face. "You were a child," he said, more to himself than to her. "You still are." She looked at him calmly. "I know what I am," she replied. "And I know what I can do." That was when they stopped questioning her skills and started questioning their plans. Outside, the world was beginning to wake up to rumors. Someone had seen the fighters. Someone had recorded a blurry video. A pilot's voice had been overheard on a scanner. The story was leaking, piece by piece, the way it always does. The officials knew this. They also knew they could not erase what had already happened. The escort pilots had confirmed her call sign. Too many systems had logged it. Too many professionals had seen her with their own eyes. An officer entered the room and spoke quietly to the others. "They want to meet her," he said. She already knew who they were. The drive to the next location was longer, quieter, no sirens. No rush, just understanding. She watched the city pass by through tinted glass. People walking dogs, kids running. Ordinary life continuing without knowing how close it had been to changing for hundreds of strangers. The building they entered was unmarked. Inside, the air felt different, focused, heavy with responsibility. People here spoke less and listened more. In a briefing room, faces turned toward her as she walked in. Some showed disbelief. Others showed recognition. One or two showed relief. An older figure stood and approached her slowly. "You shouldn't have had to do that," he said. She met his eyes. "But I could." He nodded. That answer meant more to him than any explanation. They spoke about the future without using big words. No threats, no praise, just facts. Her identity was no longer fully hidden. Her existence could no longer be denied. The call sign was active again, whether she wanted it or not. "What do you want?" someone asked. She didn't answer right away. She thought about seat 7A, about how quiet it had felt before everything went wrong, about how she had almost believed she could stay there forever. "I want choice," she said finally. "Not control, choice." The room fell silent. Choice is expensive. Choice is complicated, but it is also powerful. After the meeting, she was taken to a secure place for the night, a simple room. A bed too big for her. She lay on her back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant hum of aircraft she could not see. She thought about the people on that flight, about how they would go home and tell their families a story that sounded impossible, about how none of them would ever know her full name. She was okay with that. In the sky, fighters continued their patrols. New pilots were briefed, old ones remembered. And somewhere between secrecy and truth, the world adjusted itself around. The fact that the kid from seat 7A was no longer just a rumor. She was real. And the next time the sky needed her, hiding might not be an option. Understood. Below is part 6, written more uniquely, with a deeper emotional shift, simple English. and a human natural tone continuing seamlessly from the story so far. Morning arrived without noise. No alarms, no urgency. Just light slipping through a narrow window and touching the edge of the floor. The girl woke before anyone came for her. She always did. Habits like that never leave. For a moment, she forgot where she was. No cockpit, no alarms. No sky pressing down. Just a quiet room and the sound of her own breathing. Then memory returned, gentle but firm. The flight, the call sign, the fighters. The way adults had looked at her, not like a child, not like a hero, but like a problem they were not ready to solve. She sat up slowly, feet hanging in the air again. That small detail made her smile for half a second. Some things never changed. A knock came at the door, soft, respectful. "Breakfast," a voice said. When the door opened, a woman stepped in with a tray. She wasn't in uniform. She wasn't trying to look important. That alone made her different. "You didn't sleep much," the woman said, not asking. "I slept enough," the girl replied. The woman placed the tray down and sat across from her. "You know people are arguing about you," she said carefully. The girl shrugged. "They always do." The woman studied her face. "Do you ever wish you were just normal?" The girl looked down at her hands, small hands, strong hands. "Sometimes," she said, "but then something happens. And I remember why I can't be." Silence filled the room, not awkward, just honest. Later that day, she was taken to a wide room with large screens. Skies, maps, flight paths. People spoke in low voices until she entered. Then they stopped. Not because she demanded attention, but because something about her presence changed the air. A young officer spoke first. "There are questions from the top," he said. "They want to know if you're ready to return." "Return where?" she asked. "To the skies." The room waited. She walked closer to the screen, showing the flight path from the day before. Her eyes traced it without effort. "That plane was not the mission," she said. "It was the reason." Some nodded. Others looked confused. "I don't fly because I want to," she continued. "I fly because sometimes no one else can." An older voice spoke from the back. "And if we ask you again?" She turned. "Then don't ask," she said. "Just tell me the truth." That answer settled something unspoken. Hours later, alone again, she sat by the window watching clouds move slowly across the sky. They looked harmless now, soft, almost kind. People forget how dangerous beautiful things can be. Her thoughts returned to the passengers, the fear in their eyes, the relief when the plane touched the ground. None of them knew her story. None of them needed to. She had done what she was trained to do. Message arrived on a secure device placed quietly beside her. Short, simple. "If the sky calls again, will you answer?" She stared at it for a long time. Then she typed back, "If no one else can." Outside, a jet roared across the sky, fast and distant. The world was changing again, and whether she wanted it or not, the girl from seat 7A was already part of it. The city. Lights below looked like scattered stars, quiet and unaware. From the window, the girl watched them blur past as the vehicle moved smoothly through empty streets. No sirens, no rush. Just distance being created between her and the life she had almost lived. She rested her forehead against the glass. For the first time since the flight, her hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from release. Holding everything together takes effort. Letting go takes even more. The vehicle slowed near a small airfield far from the main city. No signs, no crowds. Just open space and a sky that felt wide again. The kind of place where decisions are made without noise. She stepped out and felt the cold air on her face. Above her, the stars were sharp and clear, real, honest. The sky had always been honest with her. People were more complicated. An aircraft waited on the tarmac. Not large, not impressive, just capable. A few figures stood nearby, giving her space, pretending they weren't watching her every move. One of them finally spoke. "This doesn't have to be goodbye," he said. She shook her head gently. "Goodbyes are loud," she replied. "This is just a pause." She walked toward the plane, each step lighter than the last. No call sign spoken, no orders given. She climbed the steps and paused at the door, turning back one final time. "For the people on that flight," she said quietly, "please tell them they were brave too." The man nodded. "We will." Inside the aircraft, the seat was empty and simple. No labels, no numbers. She sat down and closed her eyes as the engine started. This sound was different from the commercial flight. Cleaner, purposeful. As the plane lifted off, she looked down at the shrinking lights below. Somewhere among them were the people who would always remember Seat 7A. They would never know where she went next. And that was okay. The sky opened up around her, endless and familiar. For the first time, she allowed herself to smile fully. She wasn't a secret anymore. She wasn't a symbol either. She was a choice. And somewhere high above the world, where clouds met silence, the call sign lived on, not as a name spoken over radios, but as a promise that when the sky needed her again, she would be ready.